But when it comes to what our Macedonian friends said about what your neighbors are doing, it is very difficult, even perhaps impossible, to stop them from doing it because they're members of the European Union. So there's something we call solidarity. So someone in Finland or in Sweden or in Germany may disagree with what the government in Bulgaria is doing, but then they will say, look, but we have a problem. They're members of the European Union. So we have, in a certain way, we have to accept what they are saying. We may disagree with them, but they have the right to formulate their ideas. So the only way to change things is, of course, that there is stronger communication between the other member states and our partners and your neighbors in Bulgaria. That's the only way. That's the only way. But there will always be the differences, of course. I'll give you a very, very interesting example. Take, for instance, Germany and France. One of the best grammar schools in Paris is the Lycée Charlemagne. So if you ask an average Frenchman, Charlemagne, il était français ou allemand? They would say français. But the Germans, for the Germans, it's clear, it's Karl der Große. Karl der Große, the founder of the Heiliges Römisches Reich Deutsche Nation. For average German who's not a historian, it's a German. But nonetheless, there is no fight between the French and the Germans because of Charlemagne or Karl der Große. Okay, no problem. But in this case, unfortunately, it is used by your neighbors to exert pressure on you, and you can only continue to stay in touch with them. But the only way really to do is to change things is that we, other member states, talk to them and convince them to change course. Blagodar.
Thank you very much, Jan, for the presentation. I was very interested in your comments about the difficulty when people don't want to be reminded about their history. And actually, even in Scotland, many local authorities have tried to bring motions before councils to talk about Scotland's involvement in the slave trade that they don't wish to talk about, and it's very uncomfortable. Do you think a time will come when it will be more comfortable for that to be an open discussion? And is it therefore necessary to encourage young people to get involved in what you're doing because they may enter a time frame, a period, when they will be able to tell a history because it's much further in the past for them than it is for us?
It is certainly very important to engage young people in history because, as I mentioned at the beginning, historical knowledge is diminishing, and so people are more easily manipulated. And this applies also, we have been talking about European history and particularly here in the Balkans and Polish-Russia and other relations. Russia is a very huge problem. But there is also a huge problem with colonial history and everything connected with it. And we are also actually looking into the possibility of starting a project with European funding on the teaching of colonial history in European countries, with organizations from Belgium, Poland, Spain, and Finland at least involved in that. We'll see what comes out of it. But that is very challenging, obviously. And one thing which makes it actually more interesting and challenging today is that in schools, you have pupils. Actually, there are many classes where the majority of the pupils come from former colonial countries. So how do you deal with colonial history, teaching with colonial history when you have so you have to come up with a way of teaching history which is acceptable and understood by all groups. And that is what is not done with colonial history. It has been mostly written by historians in former colonial powers and in former colonies without very little interaction between them.
Your Excellency. Okay, Thank you. My name is Ivica Bucevski from Macedonia as well. My question is, first, you're right about the part on the Balkan histories. Even our national history is too inward-looking, even ethnically encapsulated and nationalist to a great extent. But we're perpetually postponing our internal debate because of the problems we had with our neighbors. That's one issue. The other issue is on the very famous examples about the Franco-German rapprochement and the like. I had the luck of having my child finishing her studies through the French system, so I can attest that French history is also very nationalist. And, she learned everything about Charlemagne, as Miro said, you know, who was born in exile at La Chapelle. It does not even have Aachen in brackets. Both at her college, meaning middle school, also at her lycée. It's interesting. I mean, this city only has a French name, and he was a French emperor, of course, you know. First World War, and what's written in French history textbooks about First World War, wow. I mean, the spirit of European rapprochement is not there, for sure. But coming back to it, in our case, and I think you can help us with your initiative, Historians Without Borders, European integration was weaponized twice, using and misusing historical narratives of our neighboring countries against our own nation and ethnicity. And Europe was completely indifferent about it. First, it was Greece challenging our existence, not only our name. The name was not an issue. The issue was the existence of a separate Macedonian nation. Right now, Bulgaria. And it's a wake-up call. It's interesting. Thank God that Putin made this famous article, because exactly the same arguments used by Putin were used by Greeks, are still used, unfortunately, even after the Prespas Agreement, and by the Bulgarians. It seems that, you know, like, I don't know, somewhere in some test tubes, you know, Stalin and Tito invented the Macedonian nations. We are brainwashed, and one day when we are democratized and Europeanized, we'll wake up as democratic, I don't know, Bulgarians or whatever, but not Macedonians for sure. So European integration is a weapon to actually push this agenda through, and this is problematic in our case, and this creates this internal revolt. Also, again, it postpones our internal debate, because, again, we need internal debate about our own national history, about our national myths. We need to also intertwine some different ethnic perspectives, democratic perspectives, ideological perspectives within our history. But we're perpetually postponing this debate because, again, we're under pressure and the very existence of our nation is put under question mark, using the European integration as a weapon, unfortunately. So, thank you.
Yeah, any comments? Yes.
Just to add that our historian colleague, former Minister of Foreign Affairs from Croatia, reminded me of an example with Bulgaria and Romania. They also have quarrels in history, like from medieval period, like Dobruja and so on. Even the second Bulgarian Vlah empire was the leader of is named differently, like Kavajanes in Bulgarian and Ioannița in Romania. And the ongoing debate among the historians is present, but it did not reflect the political issues anymore. So yeah, that is one of the examples. The other is concerning the Saint Cyril and Methodius and Slovakia and Czech Republic, who openly objected to European Union to become a judge of history, and even blockaded the declaration and the conclusions of the Council of Europe during the German presidency. So yeah, that is the issue that you mentioned, and I think that one of the possible outcomes would be to get more voice in the European Union regarding history, and to object the European Union to become a judge in history, to judge what is history truth, which is dogmatic issue, not a real one. And one issue more, we are organizing, and as the Institute of National History, together with Bologna University, every year scientific conference named Days of Justinian. And it is a very successful one because we gather historians and art historians and archaeologists from all over the world. 20 countries come every year, representative from 20 countries, and we tackle various topics. This year we will tackle the topics of networks from the Byzantine period, but also interpreting from the modern times. So this is a scientific forum which provides success in terms of to hear each other. Maybe we cannot agree between ourselves, but we will hear each other on the European and wider world scale. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we have one more question or
Yes,
comment.
Yes, I have one question to Mr. Tuomioja. What advice would you give to young researchers and history students, both in terms of building a meaningful career and keeping history relevant in today's society? What advice would you give to young researchers and history students, both in terms of building a meaningful career and keeping history relevant in today's society?
No, it's very difficult to give advice. It's actually honesty is the best advice. Look at open eyes, without any preconditions at history and all the materials. Be also critical of what you read, and that is something which is surely lacking in today's world. Is this ability to read between the lines and identify clear falsehoods, because we are living in a world where increasingly it's facts don't matter. Facts are treated as opinions, and if you don't like my facts, I don't like your facts. I have my own facts and presented them, and but that is still something which historians should stick to fact. We may, as historians, have different interpretations about history, but at least the dialogue between historians should start with checking the facts and not contesting any facts which can be proved.
Thank you very much. And we have one more here in the front. Alexandra? Okay.
Macedonia and Bulgaria right now. It should go in Serbia, an exhibition, and that was a very unusual example because we know all the disputes that we are having here with our neighbors. But on the other hand, as a lawyer, what I think about all of this and the malicious interpretation of history, where is the problem? We are invoking the ghosts of the past in order to create problems in the present. So basically, what we are facing now from our neighboring countries is the greatest absurd, because in the 21st century you can't deny someone's national, ethnic, cultural identity. You can't deny someone's language, and to have some arguments such as you're an artificial nation, and you can't create a nation by one night unless you're God or Tito. Sorry, but what can we do on that question? accept dialogue and imposing conditions. 2 years ago, I've asked an official from a neighboring countries, can we just agree that we do not agree on the historical narratives and let's move on, let's leave the history to the historians. And the answer I got was like, okay, but what if tomorrow in the European Parliament our officials meet each other? How they will greet each other if we think that you think Goce Delchev is Macedonian, we think Goce Delchev is Bulgarian? It was an answer that didn't have any sense to me, at least. And now I'm asking you the same question: can you, as historians, take the history as a science? Work in the commissions on the disputes, and can we move on and leave the past, and let's learn from the past, but not to create problems in the present. That's clear.
Well, that is a very, if I may try to comment on that, a very interesting and important question. Can we treat history as a science? Because we have the same issue with all humanistic, non-physical sciences, which are not measurable. But I think that we have agreement on what is a scientific method, and on how to test your hypothesis and your interpretations. And if you stick to that, I would say that history is a science and should be treated as a science. But there are always pseudo-historians around, those who actually falsify history for their own ends. And your point about cultural history is very, very interesting, because that goes very far into the past. So we have been talking mostly about 19th and 20th century history problems, issues, but even in the Balkans you have to go back to 1365, the Battle of Kosovo-Polia, which plays a huge role in many myths. And India, where this Hinduism is now being promoted by the government, also has very strong and far-reaching historical roots. But when you deal with cultural history, actually, this is my subjective, I'm not a cultural historian, but I would say that if you try to make cultural history into national history, you will get it wrong, because culture is something which always has crossed borders. And anything you think about your own national culture has always some features which have been loaned or taken over from other countries. I've always present the example of tango, which you think is Argentinian. But if you go to Finland, you will find that there is the world's biggest tango festival is in Finland, and it's a Finnish national. But now Finns and Argentinians have found each other, and they treat each other with respect regarding the history of the tango and its influence on their culture.
Thank you very much, and we have time for one more comment for Your Excellency Krivokapic, please.
Yes, again, too much experiences, but it's not a history issue for historians practically. It's a political issue, security issue, part of great state projects, nothing else. History is just tool to try to has base practically to occupation, the denying existing nations, and to victimize victim, to show the reasons for the wars. We saw that on the Balkans just 30 years ago. Started propaganda. Croats are former Catholic Serbs. Muslims are former Serbs. And Montenegrins are the best Serbs. You cannot tell that they are former, because we are existing all the time. And we are the best Serbs. We got the Spartanians. But always is the same reason, to take territories. And how discuss? I offer, like President of Parliament, to compose commission. Opposition position, the international representation, debate it to create common udžbenici, common books for the history. Yeah, and firstly they accept. But after 5 days they told me no chance. Because you have to discuss about telemetretics. We have constitution from 1905. In constitution is the Montenegrin church is autokephal. State constitution, not church constitution. 30 years, Serbian church is speaking that never existed Montenegrin autokephal church. On the list in Vasilev's Patriarch, We are on the 8th place. Serbs after that, nothing. It's not issue for historians because apparent things they are not ready to recognize. And they're just political and security. What is more important, security issues. 3 days ago, they celebrated one war criminals. He has report like Quisling and pro-fascist movement, chatting movements in Montenegro. His report, he wrote, I killed 8,000 child and women in Sandžak, in Crna Gora and Serbia Church celebrated him like hero. Silent in the pro-Serbian forces in Montenegro. How to discuss with it? He got Iron Cross of Hitler. How discuss about it? It's a matter of security and politics. And I know that is shaming and that is painful because I have practiced in Serbian church together with Tito, Marx and Engels due to, I just told first that existing in the constitution, I reprinted constitution, shared to the parliamentarians to show them that is lies. And got fresca in Serbian church, what is above all stolen from Montenegro. But that's basically security and political issue. It will be, again, I'm very scared. And they are waiting, they're waiting new historical trends, disturbances, some kind of the new power in the region to try to push borders again on the other line. Because all those guys in Serbia, Šešelj, Vučić, they are parliamentary formations. And somebody in EU believed that with those guys could create democracy. Vučić was the part of parliamentary formation, spent 3 months on the Pale, in the headquarters of the Mladić and Karadžić, and now somebody tried to persuade Serbian people, or rest of us, that he could create democracy, EU integrations, etc., etc. Come on, it's lack of the, not vision, I believe elementary courage in European politics to see the apparent things. It's not for discussion, not even for dispute. And lack of the justice, like it, stimulating those projects. And that's the main threat for the region. That's the main threat for the region, and historians could not solve that. Because if they are celebrating all war criminals on military academy, on the other schools, what you can expect? Priests, historians, no, you can expect again war criminals. And that's our, let's say, destiny. My generation saw that. I saw those guys personally. We don't have a right to be naive, President told me this morning, and to try to discuss about it like issue of historians. No, it's again the product of the great states using minorities like in Munich agreement in Czechoslovakia, etc., and lack of the Chamberlain in the other allotropic mortification with the other names. Unfortunately, I cannot see Churchill, and even we don't have Roosevelt in the United States. In spite that he made very terrible things with Stalin in Tehran, but let's try to be ready to prepare all of us for defense of this type of the aggressive politics. That's the message after I mentioned today. I was part of anti-war movement. I visited Croatia during the war, I visited Sarajevo during the war. I saw how it looks like the closest, and I finish here. The closest city to Rome with the airplane is Sarajevo. And war was almost 4 years. It was not far away like Kiev. Or Finland, sorry. Or Finland. For some of them it's far away. Sorry, it's not pessimism, it's just readiness to fight for the justice.
No, it's just realism.
Just readiness. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Your Excellency.
I'm not sure that I caught all your points, but regarding security and the use of history in war, history as a weapon is much more easier to use than some actual forms of arms, because unlike nuclear weapons, there is a strong taboo against using nuclear weapons. There are even clear international agreements against the use of landmines or some other types of weapons, dum-dum bullets, but there are no restrictions about using history as a weapon. So I think it is up to historians, and this is what Historians Without Borders is also about, to mobilize historians to react anywhere and everywhere whenever somebody is misusing, abusing history for political ends, particularly if it is used to justify war and to create enemy images. But I know that this can be very dangerous, and it calls for courage if you are in the country, a historian in the country which is using this. Raising your voice could be very dangerous to you and injure your health. And that is why we are dealing today mostly with the Russian historians in exile. But there are still, I would believe, quite a number of historians in Russia who do not yet have not bought the Putin line, but they cannot openly oppose it.
And can, yeah.
Martin Tasovsky, PhD student of St. Kirill and Methodius. I have two questions actually. It's connected with which specific method or approach does Historians Without Borders promote for dealing with contested historical narratives? And I'm thinking about Koselleck approach, conceptual history, critical historiography. And the second question is, how can historians working in such contexts avoiding falling into pragmatic compromise that risk legitimizing disordered or politicized version of the past?
Can you repeat the last question once again?
It's how can historians working in such projects, like you are suggesting right now, can avoid falling into pragmatic compromise that risk legitimizing the disorder or politicization versions of the past?
Politicization of the past. Politicization of the past. How to avoid this politicization of the past?
Well, I think it's the issue of if historians have integrity, they can oppose it. So that you do not give in to pressures made from anyhow from the government or from public opinion, sometimes even public opinion, because in my experience is that it's not historians who start history wars, actually. It's more politicians or the media who start them. But they can then draw in and misuse the work of historians to their own ends. But historians are less guilty of this than politicians and the media are.
Just remind about atomic war. We mentioned today a few times atomic war. 1993, UK, United States, and Russia granted Ukraine, if they delivered atomic missiles, they will guarantee security. Even 1994, Kuchma and I believe Yeltsin was accepted friendship for all the time, forever. And with this as armament to Ukraine, and we got to war. We got to war. Who took atomic weapons from Ukraine? And stimulates autocracy like 90% of Russian history to use that threat to the rest of the world. With atomic missiles in Ukraine, it was not possible. It was not possible. Now it's possible with all guarantees, 2-3 big powers and eternal friendship with Russia.
Thank you so much. And now I would like to give the floor for final remarks to the Director of ICD, Mr. Mark Domfried.
Thank you very much. I decided almost 2 decades ago when I first had the chance to meet Erkki and also benefit from his keynote address at the ICD, the wise strategy is when Erkki is next to me, speak less, listen more, out of self-interest, because I always learn such a great deal from you. Today is a testament to that once again. I'd like to just allow myself to make a very brief reflection and also express my sincere gratitude, primarily to Erkki and to Ivan, who really worked tirelessly to put this session together as an extra session as part of the forum. I think we all benefited from this in so many ways. And really, as I was listening to the conversation just now, earlier today and yesterday, so important for us not to forget about the history. There's a German expression, we were speaking about Germany before, der nicht weiß, muss alles glauben, which translates more or less, he who doesn't know is forced to believe everything. And how true is that every day as we look at the rise of extremism in our own countries, around Europe, around the world? How simple is it? Actually, we need to learn the past. We need to learn our histories. It's all about education. Professor Joseph Nye, many years ago, gave a fascinating lecture at the ICD about soft power, which of course is his forte. But in this particular lecture, he was talking about Osama bin Laden. And he said, in his point of view, Osama bin Laden is not an expert of hard power. He's an expert of soft power. Osama bin Laden didn't pay anyone to fly into the World Trade Center. He didn't force them into flying into the World Trade Center. Osama bin Laden attracted them to his interpretation of quote-unquote religion. That was the soft power of bin Laden. How is it possible that these extreme parties can rise in our own countries and communities around the world? I really do believe it's about education, it's about history. So we really commend with full force everything that Erkki is doing with the development of Historians Without Borders. I've told him, of course, we will host you in Germany. I will go myself with the papers to the notary to register the NGO, if you allow me. Whatever we can do, we need more Historians Without Borders around the world now. We need it before conflicts, we need it during conflicts, and we need it after conflicts. How powerful was the story that Erkki was telling us about Ukrainian and Russian historians working side by side, not with the goal of agreeing, but the goal of collaboration. How beautiful would the day be, hopefully in the near future, when Ukrainian and Russian historians can do that once again? As we think of the serious task, how can we possibly envision reconciliation after such a deep conflict? I think historians can help. There's the famous expression, history is written by the winners. We have to counter that. We have to challenge that. History is written by the historians. So what better than a context such as Historians Without Borders to bring those historians together? So really, we commend you so much for what you're doing. That was why I wanted to stop at the middle of our forum and take a moment really to give you the floor to tell us about the work you're doing. I'm convinced everyone at the ICD supports it and probably everyone in this room. So please let us know throughout the course of the next few days what we can do to support you. We really need Historians Without Borders now, and I think it's very urgent. So thank you again so much for, again, letting us learn from you and let us know how we can support you and to accelerate the process of Historians Without Borders. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
If I may use the opportunity also to thank ICD because you have, if not fathered, you have at least helped with the Berlin initiative between Yossi Beilin and Hiba Hussein, who were already in the Geneva initiative, writing and drafting a very concrete proposal on how the two-state solution could be implemented in the Middle East. And they are still at it, and they have a new proposal called the Berlin Initiative. But one feature of this Berlin Initiative is that it was the first time in their document, of almost 100 pages, in which they have been able to write the history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in a way which both sides have accepted. And you can imagine that this will be one of the most difficult tasks for any historians now and in the future to do. But they have managed to do it. And I think that is a good basis and a good example for what can be done with historians and people engaged in peace efforts and conflict resolution can do also to defuse the use of history in conflicts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And you know, don't get me wrong. I mean, you're a historian, I'm a political scientist. Sometimes I have the impression that we don't need historians or political scientists to explain our world. Sometimes we need psychologists because we are in strange state of the current situation. So you mentioned one quote about the Balkans, and I can remind you one more that is commonly attributed to Bismarck, that one day the great Europe war will come out of some damn foolish thing in the Balkans. Right, so we have experience in doing foolish things in the Balkans here, but we also have some positive experience and some paradigms that created coexistence. And we have the Pax Romana, Pax Ottomana, the millet system from the Pax Ottomana, although Kim Lika said that this model did not allow freedom of consciousness, but still offers some, system that gave right to religious rights. And here in the Balkans, we have I have the impression that we're going through this period of, sorry, maybe I won't pronounce it correctly. Margaret will do me a favor to correct me if I'm wrong. Geschichtsmüde, like weariness of history. Like we are having this here for many years, but I believe that we'll be able, to learn the experience from the past, from this positive experience of Pax Ottomana, which was the greatest power was of the open space. And let's hope that Europe will learn that lesson and will again have the open space that our countries, Montenegro, Macedonia, will be part of the Union and finally will live in peace. So thank you so much for your efforts. Thank you so much for your contribution to our professors, for everybody that is here today with us. And good luck with the initiatives, and we'll try to contribute it as much as we can. So thank you so much, Your Excellency.